Well, shalom. I'm here with Paul Newman from Buffalo, Wyoming, and I've known Paul since 2018. We met in Israel, and he has an interesting story of his life when he was younger, and the times that we've gotten together. We can just see the Father's hand, and we're here to interview Paul. So go ahead, Paul.
All right, David, appreciate the opportunity here. Just, maybe an hour ago, finished up a church service here at the campground in Buffalo, Wyoming, and David asked me if I had time to sit down and give a short interview, a testimonial, how we have met and how God has worked in my life over the years. And so let me just quickly, kind of the Dutch tour, take you back to 1961. We'll jump in there. I was 2 years old, and my parents had signed up to be career missionaries, foreign missionaries overseas with MAF, Mission Aviation Fellowship. And at that time, I was their only child. I was the first of four, and we went overseas to Indonesia, what you might know as New Guinea, or the western half of New Guinea. So we're on the north coast in Sentani, where I spent most of my childhood, let's say from 2 to 10 years old. And we'll move quite quickly here. My father was an accountant for MAF, and my mother was a hostess as people came through Sentani to go interior on the small single-engine, twin-engine aircraft. So they were the service roles. Many of those with MAF were pilots or mechanics or radio technicians and whatnot. But I can't remember how many. I want to guess that we're close to 20 adults out there at that time in the 60s. So most of my experiences in Indonesia were from like 61 to 68. And in the December of 68, while on vacation in Tyr, flying in a small Cessna 185, which is a tail dragger, you get 2 seats up front and 2 behind those, and then a little bench seat in the back. We were flying from the south coast up through the South Gap into the Highlands to a destination called Mulia. And that particular day, there was like a monsoon coming in from the west and strong winds, and aircraft got pushed off further to the east and went up the wrong valleys. It hit those high mountains. And the pilot, relatively new to New Guinea, had been a bush pilot in Alaska, I believe. His name was Menno Voth. And similar valley at the opening, the south end, but went up the Seng Valley instead of the Baleen. And basically got boxed in and couldn't get out. Clouds were low. Short story, trying to make a turn, right wing hit a tree, and plane tumbled down, crashed, and came apart, and caught fire, and all the things that go with a plane crash. So that obviously a huge day in my life, and I was able to escape that wreckage unharmed. Literally no scratches, no broken anything. And then ran away actually, just probably in shock and all. Went down the side of one, it's kind of a steep ravine area, and then up the west side to a plateau where I saw huts with fire, and they said I made it to the outskirts of a village, and this is a village with round huts and thatch roofs. The indigenous people there in this place were Yali. And one man there, there's quite a story before that, months before, but one man in particular named Kusaho took me into his hut and kept me warm, fed me sweet potatoes. And I was there 3 days and 2 nights before a helicopter came in. And when I saw the helicopter, I knew it could land. And so I went back down toward the river to the wreckage site in that direction, and was flown out to a little place called Ninya, and then took a fixed wing to Wamena. So that was in 68, so the spring of 69, I finished 4th grade there in Sentani Post-Tuju Mission School, run by the Christian Missionary Alliance. And then, I'd say at the end of the 4th grade, came back to Southern California and lived with my aunt and uncle. This would have been my mom's brother and his wife and 2 sons.
So I have a question. From what I remember, either hearing the story from you or I read it online somewhere, that because of what happened there with you, the natives took it as a type of miracle that you survived, and then they were able to actually bring the Bibles in to that area. Is that true?
So, yes. A little bit more detail there. If you're familiar with the story of Stan Dale and Phil Masters, they were trekking through that same area 3 months earlier, and they were killed and cannibalized just further north up the Seng Valley. They had camped, their last campsite had been very close to the wreckage site. So very hostile to the gospel. Let's say 30 days, a month after the 2 missionaries had been killed, the Indonesians went in there with military police and guns and looking to see what had happened and who had been involved. And a couple missionaries were with him. You might know the name of Don Richardson. He wrote several books. One was called Lords of the Earth, which tells this story. His first book was Peace Child, probably more popular, you might have heard of. But that did not go well. Several people were killed when the military went in there, and maybe a turning started at that time. But I think the point, David, that you're alluding to is that when the plane crashed, my brother Stephen, I'm thinking he was around 5 years old, he was in that back jump seat. And he actually, when the plane broke apart, he actually flew from the fuselage of the plane. And that's who they saw. They saw this young kid, t-shirt, shorts, whatever, same clothes I was wearing, flying through the air. And then they see me running down the trail, if you want to call it that, toward the river and crossing it on a little pole bridge. But they're thinking that's one and the same. So Stephen would no way could have survived such an impact. But so that's the miraculous part, that they saw me flying through the air, and then just seconds or moments later, I pop out down at the river. So alive. And I had been in a 5-point harness seatbelt right behind the pilot. So quite a bit more protection and much better strapped in. So back in the United States, Southern California, a lot of new experiences. That was probably more difficult for me personally. As I thought back over the years, I had a new family and a new culture, a new school, a new church, new food. Everything about it was different. And it's like one day, everything that's familiar to you in Indonesia, and now you're in Southern California, and it all changed. And all the people that I knew, whether they were schoolmates or whether they were other missionaries that we would often call aunt and uncle, as one big family. That was like a light switch that changed overnight. So, big part of my life. Finished high school there in Monrovia, California. Went on to Laterno, at that time Laterno College. Now it's called Laterno University in Longview, Texas. Picked up an engineering degree and several jobs since then. Engineering and manufacturing and a little bit of construction later. So just kind of leap forwarding on, was back in Indonesia in the mid-90s with Janice and a 3.5-year-old daughter called Elizabeth. We did a stint there, both in Java, Bandung Language School, and a shorter time in what's now called Papua, that same island, West Papua New Guinea there. And then back in the States, and now it's, let's just jump ahead to say 2016, and I had been for years drawn to the land of Israel. In fact, in 2012, I had 2 opportunities to get into Africa when my daughter was doing that year between high school and college, and was able to meet up with her in Johannesburg, South Africa, and then over spring break in Tunis, Tunisia. And especially on the Johannesburg, was trying to drop down into Israel, and I would have been content just to be there for 1 to 3 days on that longer trip, and it just never could work out. But by 2016, went over there with another gentleman from our church, and we picked grapes. We picked grapes with Hayuvel, a ministry that encouraged people to come to the land of Israel, and to both work to help the farmers as well as tour. So you'd work for 2 days, and it was hard and hot. You got up early before the sun and get out in the fields and pick the grapes. This is like in September, end of August, September of 2016. And then on the 3rd day, you would tour different parts of the land. So that was for 3 weeks. And then we got into Jordan, Amman, and down to Aqaba, and then back to Israel. So a week with Dawn in Israel, we rented a car, just fell in love with the land, saw as much as we could see, met up with other people, had a wonderful 30-day experience there, a full month in the land. And then was back in March of 2017 and had 2 trips in 2017. And by 2018, we back up here in 2016, my first wife of nearly 36 years, Janice, died of a heart attack. And by 2018, Sandy and I were in Jerusalem getting married in March of 2018. That was pretty cool. And it was on, I don't know if it was that year, was it 2018?
2018.
2018, yep. Okay, so let's just say a week after we were married, it was the week of Pesach. And we're all meeting at a YMCA, and David is there. He's coming out of Washington State, and I'm guessing there were over 60 people, 50 for sure, but I think over 60 people there at that YMCA. It was kind of a setup as a buffet. Kimberly Rogers Brown did a wonderful job putting that together with her and her husband. Great experience. Many people were just glad to be there and reunited, seeing each other again. And I think it was David's first trip at that time.
It was.
So, great experience. Finished that week out. We were down in Eilat for a little bit that week, kind of a married in Jerusalem and honeymoon outside of Eilat. So just all good memories, all good memories.
That's a beautiful place. Rhonda and I went there on our last trip in 23 and went scuba diving with the dolphins.
Yeah.
There in the Red Sea. It was awesome. Beautiful place.
We've been able to scuba dive both off the Eilat side, Israel side, and then the Aqaba side. If you take the road down toward Saudi Arabia, just a few miles south of Aqaba. So, all good memories, great people. Let me just quickly jump ahead here to the fall of 2020. I've been doing some commercial construction jobs in Wyoming, and they were finished up in July, and we jumped in a used RV and hit the road and put most of our stuff in storage, and we ended up in Springfield, Missouri. And we had committed to help our friends from Oregon there for 2 months with some of their rental properties and condos there. So we're there in the fall of the year. So I think we arrived in October and we stayed through like the second week of January of 2021. It got kind of cold for the RV, so we snowbird headed south to Texas. But one of the first weeks there's a congregation in a little kind of a bend in the road called Dogwood. I don't even think
Sparta.
it has.
It's in Sparta.
In Sparta?
Yeah.
Okay. Out there.
During COVID, 2020.
Yeah.
December of 2020.
Kind of a southeast of Springfield. And we'd been told about our first visit. We walked in there, and I think we were close to being on time and starting and being a good, back row Baptist. I looked for a pew in the back there and sat down next to one guy sitting on one of the shorter back pews there. I think it was off to the right, and Sandy, my wife, sat down next to me, and they did their morning service, and then they take a break, and so we just started talking to the people next to us, and lo and behold, David is the gentleman that's sitting next to me, and I think he recognized me, or maybe he recognized Sandy.
After we had a little bit of a discussion, I realized who you were.
And I mean, the last time I knew, he's from Washington State, so I'm not bringing up the people I know in other states. It's just kind of off my radar. But we make the connection very shortly, and it's just a joy to go someplace and fellowship with people and have met and had other experiences with. So that was just a great day. We enjoyed that fellowship, some great music. They would sing and play a half a dozen or more instruments for at least a half hour, maybe even longer than that, 45 minutes to start off the worship time or teaching time. So some great experiences there at Dogwood. So that's just one example of how God brings our paths, that kind of crisscross as life goes on, brings our paths together. So when was the next one?
Can't remember.
Were you back here in Buffalo on one of your trips?
I think so, yeah. We came and visited you.
You came through, and
right.
So we were in an RV KOA campground here in Buffalo, back in Wyoming, working some more contracts, and David and Rhonda stopped through, and we spent a couple days together, and it was the one, what I distinctly remember, it was the one time my trusty Toyota Prius broke down, and David was able to take me back to my car and help me through that. So we had to get a tow truck and get it towed back to Sheridan. So, I mean, took some time, but what a blessing to have someone that was willing to help. And when we had a broken vehicle, it needed some maintenance.
And we're Rhonda and I are just coming from Yellowstone, and we knew we'd be passing right by your Buffalo, and so we've had a great weekend. We spent Shabbat together this weekend, and so I thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and life and testimony with us.
Yeah, and we're already talking ahead to next year where we might cross paths again in Tennessee. So that's one of the hopes and joys we have. You know, each year we have these opportunities, and I count them as blessings.
Mm-hmm.
Where
absolutely
God brings people back into your life that were significant and were encouragement and had a great impact. So we love you, brother.
Love you too, brother.
Yeah.
Thank you.